Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to A Pixel at a Time, a place to hear about how pixels and passion collide. My name is Inês Lagarde, and I hope you are ready to join the ever-evolving world of games development, exploring it from every angle. Players, developers, and enthusiasts. If you like what you hear and you would like to support us, please do not forget to take a trip to our Patreon, and our store. Yes, we do have a store. It has goodies, t-shirts, badges, and all those nice things. And if you do go to both of these places, you might find something that you like, either by, just joining our Discord community through our Patreon, or in our store by getting those gears or like that swag in place that will get you through the next season. So do check those out. That's an excellent way to support the podcast and helping us improve the production on this side and keep releasing more episodes to a higher standard of quality. So if that's you, if you already did any of those, thank you so much. You're like our number one fan. So thank you so much for staying here with us, coming back and supporting our podcast. Talking about support, do not forget to subscribe, share with your friends, leave us comments so that we can keep improving, so that we feel the love from our community and that we can continue to improve. So do not forget, it would be amazing to have like 100 subscribers in all the platforms we're present. So that would be very good. Either you're on Spotify, YouTube, or even on Apple Podcasts. Do not forget to subscribe, because that will help us not only get rated, but also like increase the quality of this podcast and keep doing better stuff with it. So yay! So, going to today's episode. Today's episode was a very fun one to record, as pretty much most of the episodes I had so far. Honestly, I think I struggled the most on the solo episode. So, if you do have questions or stuff you'd like me to talk about, do send me your voice bites so that I can start creating episodes around that. Please do send stuff related to games development or games in general, because otherwise I will not pick it up. You can always do that by sending stuff to our email. That's apixelatatime.podcast@gmail.com. That's apixelatatime.podcast@gmail.com. So I will be waiting for those suggestions from you or questions so that we can start building more solo episodes around it. So yeah. Talking about solo episodes. So this isn't new to us. I briefly talked about it in the previous episode, but we're dropping some special episodes on Patreon, which is me talking about video games that mark my life somehow and talking a bit about the design and some of the choices they made. So if that's something you would like and just keep listening and following us, do go to our Patreon, because we will drop them there. We still don't know exactly the cadence, but for sure one per quarter. So do keep an eye on it, as we will keep sharing those episodes in there. Cool. So this talk we had, first of all, I just want to thank Zoe in general. I met Zoe when I still was working with the sumo group. And Zoe has been one of the major influences in my career, I would say. Not only we started working together very fast, we also, I feel like we clicked in terms of what are our values. And she has been an amazing support in terms of how to choose the next steps, how to make sure I keep creating a life that is aligned with my values and with what I would see the future in is, and, the tiny little inner child in is being. And honestly, I have to thank her a lot for that, because I was in a pretty dark place in terms of where I saw my career going, because I got to a point where I was not believing anymore in the career I thought games could give me. So Zoe brought a different angle to this and made me realize that we are also responsible for the career we build. And it's not by being part of an organization that we need to become that organization or that organization's values. So I think this is a lot of food for thought, but at the same time, I think it is important for us all to have people in our lives like that makes us question what is going on and make us keep evolving as human beings and professionals. So if you haven't followed Zoe yet, please do follow her. She shares this at the end of the episode anyway, but you can find her on LinkedIn. And she also started her own coaching business, which is called Lumina Leadership. I also know that during the episode, I do call it Lumina Coaching because she is my coach. So that's my mistake. But it's Lumina Leadership. You can look for it online. And she does provide consulting services. She provides coaching services for developers like yourself or myself, right? And yeah, if you haven't considered a coach, I think this is my line too. Please do consider having a coach in your life from your area of expertise or an area you want to evolve, because that can really help you bridge those gaps in knowledge that sometimes we need and we don't know we need to reach the next level in our career. So if you're feeling a bit frustrated with where you are at, or if you aren't, but you want to take the next level, next step, consider that. And I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's go. Put the tape on and... So joining us today, Zoe Curnoe, seasoned game development leader with an impressive track record at studios like The Coalition, Riot Games, Timber Games, and most recently, her work as the founder of Lumina Coaching. So, Zoe, thank you so much for joining me today. We have known each other for quite a while.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. Yeah, it's very good to have you here and finally have this chat that is not, you have been my coach for quite a while. So I have been quite lucky in that sense, and the support you have been giving me. But yeah, thank you so much for accepting this offer.
Of course.
And yeah. So with this impressive background, you have leading production teams in titles like League of Legends, Gears of War, and now coaching people through leadership, games production, like starting businesses, hiring people. I want to ask you first, what made you dive into the video games industry, and how did your career begin for everyone listening?
That's a great question, because it's never a simple one, it seems, for people who never seem to go this very straight route into games. But so I went to school for fine art, not related to video games, but it was the 90s. So not a ton of video gaming going on. It was kind of just, starting up back then. And I played a lot of games. The Super Nintendo came out when I was in university, and I almost dropped out of school because I played it so much.
I didn't
Not
know
a
that.
joke. Yep, that's true. Twice, actually, university and college. But I played games before that quite a bit with my two brothers. I have two older brothers, and we played a lot of Street Fighter, and we also, played a lot of ColecoVision in our friends' basements. And so it just was, I'm that age where sort of digital technology was emerging and growing and becoming very exciting. It was always something I really loved, but I had an artistic background. My father was an artist. My whole family is very creative. So going into something creative, I think it was almost just a little bit assumed. So I went to university for fine art history and photography. And then really the digital revolution, I guess we could call it, started, and web design was the thing. And so when I finished university, I decided that I wanted to get more into interactive media. Back then it was called multimedia. And that was in the early 2000s. And so I did a sort of a postgraduate certificate in multimedia design. And I met a development director, which I had no idea what that was. But that was a project manager at Electronic Arts here in Vancouver back in the day. And she was just such a great teacher. And I wish I could remember her name, but I remember her, such a funny thing. I remember her putting a Gantt chart up on the screen and then showing us how you would slot different parts of making a multimedia project together, like all the different people, the audio and the design and this. Yeah. And I remember thinking, that's like the coolest thing I've ever seen. Now, I would never now say that a Gantt chart is cool, because it really is not. But
no.
back then, it was 2001. Yeah. I was like, well, that's so interesting. Like, to me, it just was really interesting. And I distinctly remember the other students in the class's eyes glazing over, and they were like, get me out
Yeah.
of here. Like, they just were not interested in that at all. And so I continued with that class with the design side. And at the end of it, I just really realized that my love was helping organize the creative people, not necessarily
Yeah.
driving the creative all myself, even though I'm still a photographer to this day. I'm a very creative person. It's what I love. But the team aspect and the helping creative people do their best work was really I just loved it. And so then a few sort of games adjacent jobs I found before I actually landed my first actual production job, which was at the Banff Center here in Canada, which is an amazing artistic hub. And I joined a group called the Banff New Media Institute. And at the time, it was run by Sarah Diamond, who is kind of a visionary in that space. And they had what they called a work study program. So you worked 4 days a week and learned how to become a producer.
Yeah.
And the other day you got to just study things that helped progress your career forward. And so we worked on some games there that were to teach kids in Northern Canada in rural communities, physics and math. And it was a part of a broadband initiative by the government. And it was really cool. And that was like, I was hooked. Like, those games were so interesting, and we got to work with people from all over. I think one of our designers was from Australia. It's this really interesting group of people. I don't know if we totally knew what we were doing back then, but it was really satisfying. And after that, I was just hooked. And so I really focused on moving back to Vancouver, which was such a video game development hub in Canada, and getting a job making commercial video games to kind of see how they did it. And then that really, my career took off from there. So it was a few years of experimenting, trying things out, meeting amazing, interesting people, and people being willing to talk to me and teach me those things, because I didn't really know how to do it or understand it when I started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess like none of us does in the games industry.
No, right. It's true, right?
It's true.
Yeah. Back then too, there was no, like, Vancouver Film School is one of the premier game design schools in Canada.
Yeah.
They didn't have a game design program yet. It was coming right around that time, but it wasn't, hadn't been created yet. Yeah.
That's amazing. You know, like when I was looking into my first opportunities, because it's just, first of all, it's just amazing to hear people talking about their experiences and how they got where they got, because sometimes from working in games, or even for people that even are starting their career in games or looking for their first position in games, it feels like there's a lot of pressure finding the right path, right? Or being and following that career path. So hearing people talking about like how flexible it can be, especially at the beginning or until you find your passion within making games, like there's no really like a right way to get there, is there?
There absolutely isn't. And I think you and I've talked about this, but I think also there's a generational thing. I'm very squarely Generation X. And I think millennials and Gen Z, they put so much pressure on themselves to, by 30, I must have discovered this thing. And by this age, I have to have this thing. And my career has to be set. And I think the answer is it doesn't. And who has created those deadlines for you? What are those deadlines? And do what makes sense for you, and try things out. Like, travel, go work in a different country, go try a different type of thing. It doesn't always have to be this straight line. It's like going on a road trip across Canada. Like, sometimes you got to improvise a little, because you might hit snow in the Rocky Mountains and you got to stay there for 2 days. Well, enjoy the snow. Go snowboarding. There's a little bit of that to it. By the way, I also didn't get my first job in commercial video game development until I was 33 or 34, around there. And before that, I wasn't really sure what was right for me. And it's okay to not know. Yeah. It's okay to try and experiment and see what fits. Yeah. Because it might not all fit.
Yeah, I think you are absolutely right. Like, I think people from my generation, like, I'm around 30 right now, right? 30 something. And it does feel sometimes like the weight of, like, so I've been studying all of these years for video games because now there's like all these formed courses. And I also came from the multimedia background. So I did a lot of studying. I had the a chance to work on both edutainment games as a games designer, and then later my first job in the games industry for commercial games was as a producer. And it just feels sometimes like, did I fail at something here? Because, this is not where I expect it to be by any means. And sometimes it's very easy to get behind those titles or those ideas of where we should be, and then just knock ourselves off.
Absolutely. And if we think about it, though, like, you've got 30 some odd more years to figure it out.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be everything right now, right?
No. Yeah, absolutely. And absolutely. I mean, there's physical constraints for women if they want to have children by a certain age. And that absolutely creates, a deadline for people. It wasn't for me because that wasn't really a vision for my future. So that gave me more flexibility. But those deadlines are just they create so much pressure for ourselves, and they put unnecessary pressure, I think. Whereas our goals, they got to be meaningful for us, not someone else's timeline or expectation of who we are and who we should be.
100%. Do you think the fact that you started your career by like exploring and meeting those different people before you even got to commercial games development, you think that influenced a little bit of the way you see the teams, the people you approach, or even the way you lead teams sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And yeah, absolutely. I think it gave me more insight into how hard creative production is and the flexibility that you have to give yourselves and your team, and that you, as a producer, have to take time to understand those things. I think if I also hadn't pursued creative pursuits on my own, I wouldn't have known that struggle and how difficult it is, where it's like, no, you don't just sit down at your desk and are instantly creative and can be creative for 8 hours a day. It's just not how it works.
No.
And so, and our brains just don't work like that. But so allowing that flexibility and that collaboration and that knowing how sensitive it is when you're getting creative feedback and how that can feel, and really recognizing that. Yeah, I think it definitely shaped who I am as a producer and as a leader, for sure.
That's amazing to hear. Do you feel like there's different levels of demand by working on those different types of games as well? I'm pretty sure the kinds of intensity also vary, right? On the type of timelines, on the type of deadlines we have to fulfill sometimes. So do you feel
absolutely
like it ever impacted you in terms of stress, and how did you deal with it? And did you ever feel like it was constraining to you in any way? Because being a producer and a manager, like, sometimes it's very easy for us to feel like we're carrying the world with us, right?
Yes, true. Yes.
And trying to manage everything and juggle everything. So how was this for you? And what's the biggest difference between like non-commercial versus commercial, and even the place where you are right now with your career?
I mean, definitely. Yeah, of course, games often have, not, I won't say always, but often have aggressive deadlines. Yeah. And so keeping it in mind, like, what's most important. And as I always say, and I think I coined this when I was at Timber, but just saying rigorous prioritization.
Yeah.
Even recruiting, gets that as well. And then all the groups that are downstream get that. And so if we're not really rigorously prioritizing things, we all end up thinking everything is the top priority, and it never is. It's never all priority one, but we're all humans, and we all believe that our thing is the most important priority. And I think, honestly, learning prioritization and sticking to it and really understanding it is honestly a part of, I'm going to make a grand statement now.
Go for it.
It is a part of the lack of sustainability currently in our video game business.
I agree with you.
I don't think people are prioritizing, and I don't mean like just prioritizing features on a game, but prioritizing how many companies you're buying.
Yes.
Can you actually support all of those studios, not just financially as a larger company, but with your infrastructure, how quickly you're growing each studio. And, that's just on the operational side, but it's just really prioritizing, like, what can we manage right now?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean holding back from innovation, because prioritization actually helps with innovation.
100%.
But if we're not talking about those things and we're not looking at them, we get in a lot of trouble. And I think we're currently in a lot of trouble. And I think if we could prioritize a little bit better, we might be doing better at that.
100%. So just for anyone listening to us out there that doesn't know what you mean by prioritization, or you used a specific term, didn't you?
I'd say rigorous prioritization.
Rigorous prioritization. Yeah. Do you want to give a bit of insight to what you mean by that for a second?
Yeah, I just mean that, looking at all of the things that you can do in a day, week, milestone, game, larger business, is that you're always looking at what is most important and most risky, and you're tackling those things first. Mm-hmm. And the things that are maybe slightly less priority or just blue sky or just ideas, you're maybe leaving those for a different time. Mm-hmm. And you're also looking at what's in front of you and things that can be done really quickly and easily, but really aren't that important. Yeah. That as a leader, you're delegating those to other people, or you're just not doing them because they just probably aren't that important. In our brains as humans, we can very, very easily gravitate towards the not important, easy, and quick things to do because they are easy and quick and they don't take a lot of effort.
100%. I do that a lot. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's normal. It's human nature.
It's very
That's how
human.
Our brains work.
Yeah, especially when one, as is my case, quitting my job and then trying to start a studio by myself. It's sometimes quite hard. I haven't nailed this process yet at all. That's the honesty, right? The honesty part. And it's very interesting because I've made those mistakes. What I can say to people out there is that making those mistakes made me realize, oh wait, I'm actually making a mistake there. Yeah. So it's actually pretty good. It's also very interesting because one of the problems I've had, and maybe you also have some experience on this, is when you work as a producer, I can very easily hide and use my skills to support other people making those kinds of decisions. Yeah. And supporting them and figuring out what's the right way of pursuing the project, or prioritizing according to the project and their necessities either by time, the team they have, or if they have a tight schedule that they really need to fill for budget reasons. It's very, very easy. But when we're by ourselves, then things change quite a bit. So
yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any advice on that in particular?
Yeah, I think the key is goal setting, really, is getting really clear on those goals. I haven't had a paper agenda that I write in with a pen in years. Mm-hmm. I always use a notebook. Notebooks are really important to me. But in terms of planning my day, when I was at a studio with a team, it was all done, in the calendar or with other people. Yeah. But by myself, I was definitely how am I going to do this? And what I needed to do was kind of coach myself, actually. Yeah. And so I got a coaching agenda that was created by a coach in Australia. I wish I could remember her name right now. Mm-hmm. But it is fantastic. And it divides up your year into quarters. It forces you to do a monthly reflection every month. Mm-hmm. So your agenda ends, and at the end of the month, it's okay, let's reflect on this month together, sort of in this book. And I really as digital as I am, because I'm kind of a digital baby, but it's forcing me to stop and write down what did I want to do this month? Oh, I kind of did that. I didn't do that one. That's fine. Mm-hmm. That one's not important anymore. Oh, I thought that was important 30 days ago, and now actually it's not at all. Yeah. And so it just gets you to do that. But it also really encourages you to set priorities for connecting with people. Yes. It has questions that it asks you. It'll say, who did you connect with this month? What did that mean to you? Mm-hmm. It helps you kind of keep a vision for your life top of mind. And I'm finding it incredibly helpful, but that's something brand new. I just did it this year.
It's so
It
good.
Also forces you to pick a word for the year.
Wow.
Which I really enjoyed. Yeah. Yeah. And so mine for this year is serendipity. So every time that word comes up or something that is serendipitous happens, which just happened today, I kind of highlight it and write it down and say, oh, that's coming up more for me. And so I can kind of see it. And it all sounds a little cheesy, but I'm loving it. So
it sounds cheesy, but it also sounds kind of kind and empowering in a way, because you start taking over.
Those are good words for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been fun, actually. It's been really fun to use it
Yeah.
in that way. So, yeah. And of course, now I'm looking at digital versions
Yeah.
because I'm like, I don't know if I want to carry around this big, thick
Yeah.
book with me out everywhere. So I will probably switch to an iPad version with my pencil,
Yeah.
but we'll see. We'll see
Yeah,
how
that
long it
makes a
goes.
lot of
Yeah.
sense. And I
Yeah.
think that also ties into the concept of the 2 millimeters a day. Do you know that
Yeah.
concept? Like, I've been reading
No.
Atoms.
Oh, Atomic Habits.
Yeah, Atomic
Yeah.
Habits. And I had the chance to talk to Lauren Morrison, which she is a business coach, I think.
Yeah.
I think she's currently in LA, and I had the opportunity to talk to her very briefly this week. It was very, very lucky of me.
Awesome.
And she also talked about this concept of 2 millimeters per day, like, which is
Yeah.
literally, sometimes you have this vision for your life, right? But the
Yeah.
visions for your life is not for you right now.
No.
So it's
Yeah.
literally like, what are you doing today that is moving you like just those 2 millimeters forward,
Absolutely.
instead of trying to focus on
Absolutely.
this picture of
Yes.
yourself that you want to be, right? Like,
Absolutely.
what are your 2 millimeters today or this week? But keep focusing on
Yeah.
the 2 millimeters and not
Yeah.
on the meter, right?
No. Well, in some days, like, honestly, I'm happy that I got out of bed and did the laundry.
Exactly.
Like, wow. Awesome, Zoe. High five.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think I even, dealt with that, and having now being self-employed with my own business is just
Yeah.
me. Like, I took a 2-week vacation in August, and I did a teeny bit of work during it because I had a consulting gig,
Yeah.
but just a few hours.
Mhm.
And the rest of it was vacation.
That's so
And in
good.
my head, but in the back of my mind was this like, why are you taking a vacation?
Yeah. All
You're
that
not
guilt.
really working full time right now, because I've had a very nice summer and it's been amazing. But my goodness, like, I've been working full time since I was 14 years old.
Yes.
Like, not full time, but I've had a job since I was 14 years old, and then school, and then university, and on and on and on. And it's like, if we don't take these moments to just take a deep breath and just enjoy the world around us, then we're going to wake up one day on our deathbed, and we're not going to, the regrets we're going to have isn't that I wish I worked more.
Yeah.
Like, no one ever said that when they were passing into the next phase of their life.
Yeah.
Like,
It's more
they
like,
said, I didn't spend enough time with family and friends and enjoy, and I didn't go for a walk in the forest. And
yeah.
yeah.
So we all need a little bit more of that. I also watched a Instagram story of this girl that was saying something on the lines of, so this is just your reminder that Mount Everest has a lot of people around their 30s that were high accomplishers as people, and they are all dead. So let's all stop for a second.
Oh my God.
And try to enjoy life a little bit more. Like, it's a very morbid way of putting it.
Very funny.
But it's super funny.
It's also true. Like, I think that also is like, enjoy your life and die doing it.
Yeah.
Like, it's also part of it too. Like, you've got to just love life. And if you just spend it working all the time and thinking about achievement,
Yeah.
and what is achievement? And if it's just monetary, I guarantee you it will not make you happy.
Definitely
It'll make
won't.
life easier. It absolutely makes life easier. But happier and more fulfilled, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of talk right now talking about looking at purpose and
Yeah.
a purposeful life, and not necessarily being happy,
Mhm.
but just having a little more purpose and knowing what your purpose is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what brings more joy to people.
Yeah. Because it's necessary at the end of the
Yeah.
day. Okay. So, having said that, of course, like, with all of this good advice also comes a little bit, or its fair share, of the other side of the coin, where we feel more overwhelmed, even depressed sometimes. And there's a lot of people, especially with the current wave that is going on the video games industry, that
Absolutely.
might be feeling that way out there. So I think my question is, have you ever had a moment where you had to deal with imposter syndrome? Or do you have any tips for anyone out there that might be feeling that way whilst leading projects? Or
Absolutely. And it's, I think when you talk about imposter syndrome, we have to also highlight that it is far worse for marginalized folks.
Mhm.
And often that imposter syndrome, that, people who don't look like the majority can feel it because the systems have been set up to purposely make them feel like that.
Yeah.
So it isn't necessarily something that's inside us, but something that's inside the system. And I think when we all recognize that, we can also overcome it and go, well, I'm not broken. The system's broken.
Yeah.
So how do I change the system? And that's something I've been working on for my entire career, to try and make this industry, the games industry, a more equitable place for everyone, where people don't feel like that and don't feel like every day like there's something kind of pushing them out and saying you don't belong here. Still exists though, so I'll keep doing that forever. But of course, we all have self-doubts of our ability, and we all have moments where we make mistakes and then we beat ourselves up for it and go, oh my gosh, that's terrible. And I think the imposter syndrome really comes up when we let those voices in our heads get too loud. And those voices in our heads, I think I like describing it like, they're there for a reason. They were there when we lived in caves and we were going to be eaten by animals that were starving to say to us, hey, stay in the cave. It's safe in there. Stay around the fire. Go out and get your food, but get right back there, to stay safe. And we were safe in community and with a group of people. And that little voice in the back of your head when you're about to jump off a cliff and you're about to go do something scary, or you're going to give a presentation, or you're taking on a new job, it's there to keep you safe. And it does love you.
Yeah. It's just trying to protect you.
It is trying to protect you, but that protection isn't really very good for us when we want to try new things and we want to be bold and brave and courageous. And so we have to tap into another side of ourselves, and we have to tamp that voice down that is telling us we can't do those things. But often too, that voice can actually be a real voice that maybe at some point in your career, someone has said to you, I don't think you can do that, or you won't be very good at that, or that's really hard to do. And those voices stay with us forever. They stay so long, and we have to learn kind of how to ignore them and how to just smack them away when they come up and recognize them.
Yeah.
Swat them away, kind of like bees buzzing around a flower. Like, no, I'm not going to listen to you today. It takes a lot to do that. And I know what you might have talked about. I think I talked about this in a LinkedIn post. I like to think about it like tools, and we have to put new tools in our toolbox to deal with those things. And so, I think that, I think the best way to deal with imposter syndrome when you feel it coming up is recognize it, look at it, like examine it. Oh, I'm feeling like this. Something that's incredibly important to do is not to say, I am an imposter, but you can say, I feel like. And when we use different language, it helps us push it away a little bit, so it's not all that we are, and helps us kind of push through those things and get to the other side where you can look at it a little bit objectively. You can sit in it and feel it, but then we do have to pull ourselves out of it when we're feeling those things. And know that, when you're about to do something really scary, like when I've done my GDC talks, part of the reason I forced myself to do public speaking is I find it incredibly scary. Like, it is terrifying to me. My first GDC talk in 2017, my husband still jokes about it. It's like, I was about to have a nervous breakdown. Like, I was sitting in my hotel room crying and was like, this is terrible. I can't do this. I'm not going to go. What am I going to do? And I was sitting in the hotel room by myself, and he phoned me, and he was just like, get here, like, come here now.
Oh God.
And so I did, and I got there and I did it, and it's great. And it's like publicly on the internet. And I've had people reach out to me and be like, that's a great talk, and that they learned from it. And so, those moments are terrifying, but if we do them more often, they become less terrifying and we start to enjoy it.
So I think my question is, of course, like, we can put ourselves out there, try to do it a little bit more to get a bit more comfy with the uncomfortable, right? But do you have any like top tips for people out there that want to control those voices, those saboteurs inside of their heads?
Well, something in the coaching style that I learned is that we talk a lot about identifying allies that we can draw on, who can help us with those things.
Yeah.
And so what we do is a little visualization saying, okay, who are some heroes in your life? They can be real people, they can be imagined, they can be comic book characters. I'm literally sitting here right now looking at my desk, and I have 2 Wonder Woman figurines. And I have Pee Wee Herman, who is an American TV show star who's incredibly silly.
Yeah.
And he's holding a sign that says fun.
Oh.
And my coach really encouraged me last year to embrace some fun and to really tap into that side of myself. So he's there every day reminding me, like, just have fun.
Aw.
Like, you just need to have fun. And Wonder Woman is there for her strength and power and, you know, transformation. And she's been my hero since I was a very small child. And then I also have a big fat Buddha, wooden Buddha, that I got when I was in Thailand traveling by myself. And he reminds me that I can do hard things because I traveled to Southeast Asia for almost 3 weeks by myself, and I had never traveled by myself.
Wow.
Great first trip, Zoe, by yourself. But I went to Thailand and Vietnam. I found this figurine in a store in Chiang Mai in northern Thailand, and I was by myself and I was feeling really lonely. And Chiang Mai is a beautiful city, so friendly, the most incredible, magical place. And this man in the store did not speak English, and he picked it up and put it in my hands and just sort of gestured like, this is for you. And he gave it to me.
Wow.
And my whole trip changed after that moment. And so that's what he reminds me of. It's just that I can do hard things. And in those hard moments, there is a hand reaching out to you that will kind of pull you through. That's so good. Yeah. So those are the ones that, you know, that I have. I have some others, which is RuPaul. He also reminds me to laugh and be fierce all the time.
RuPaul's amazing. Let me just say that.
But that's just one of the strategies, you know, that I use and that I use the people I coach is if you can really in the moment grab onto one of those, and they'll tamp down the saboteur, and you'll start to see the allies surrounding you, and you can tap into their powers to kind of push you through. Because what we realize in life is that we've been collecting these allies around us. It's why we admire people. It's why we admire comic book characters, movie characters, video game characters. Yeah. I know some of yours are video game characters.
Mine are.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you. I can share it openly. I think mine are Kratos from God of War. I have like this very cute, like, which is funny because Kratos is not a cute character at all for anyone that knows the game, but I have this cute crochet version of him, and I have it like right by my side on my desk usually, and it reminds me of the strength of like discovering something new about yourself, because for those of you that have played growth, yes, because for those of you that have played the most recently parts of the franchise, it goes through a massive character transformation. So Kratos means strength, but he also means like evolving. I would say it's very important to me. I have a tiny Lara Croft, Ellie from The Last of Us. I have 2 tiny ones. I also have a Wonder Woman, but I usually tap more into Ellie and Lara Croft. And in my case, I also use the sunset in Portugal to remind me of home and ground me. So that's always extremely helpful from my perspective, right? So they can be anything. I think I've been thinking a bit about this and doing a bit of reframing, refining my values and all those kinds of things. And I realized that some musicians are also like figures like that for me that I really, really admire. And I think I need to start tapping into those for that sassiness and confidence to do something sometimes. But
absolutely. Well, I just had that experience, and I just posted about it on LinkedIn, and I'm amazed at the engagement of people. But I went to see Metallica with my husband in Seattle on the weekend. And it was their new show. They're playing basically all of the music that everyone who first discovered them in the 80s loves, and a little bit from their new album. And they play 2 nights, and it's just an incredible show. And they range from, I think, 59 to like 62 in age, which is just mind-blowing to me. And the show was absolutely phenomenal. Like, it was incredible. And there was kids there from like age 6 to like 70.
Yeah, everyone.
And it was a totally incredible. It was just such a collective experience, and everyone was singing along to all of the songs that they knew and all of the lyrics. And it was just this incredible collection of misfits and weirdos and metalheads
So
and
good.
old punk rocks and goths. And yeah. And so I think that's a new one for me, is, putting on some amazing Metallica and just powering through the challenges.
That's so good.
Maybe it'll be my new song I listen to before I do a talk.
Yeah. You know what? We all got to learn like a little bit of Nothing Else Matters. Like it sounds so beautiful on the guitar. It's just like that intro. It's phenomenal.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
It's incredible to hear 80,000 people singing it at the same time. It was it was absolutely amazing. It was amazing. So yeah, I think that comes full circle back to imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Like I also just watched the Metallica documentary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to forget the name, but it's when they were at their lowest point in the early 2000s and they were really struggling and they almost didn't make it through and they were questioning everything. They're like having so many issues, and the lead singer was going through recovery, but they figured it out. And, the bassist they found back then is still with them, and they're still just doing incredibly well, and they just put out a new album. So
it's good.
And they're kind of having a resurgence. They got nominated for a Grammy.
Yeah.
So they pushed through, but they went through those dark times, and even people like that go through those things.
Yeah.
I think that's what we have to remind ourselves, is that it's just part of being human.
100%. And sometimes we gotta stick through. It might not be like a smooth sailing, right? But sometimes it's worth to stick to it and try it out. And sometimes even dropping out. Dropping out's not a problem either. And I think that's important to be talked about too.
At the beginning, I said, so I dropped out of university, I believe. I dropped out of university once, college once. And university, I just was not enjoying it. There'd been a death in my family. It was just a really hard time. It's in my early 20s. I was like, I just don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And so it took me, I think, 8 years from beginning to end to get my degree.
Mm-hmm.
I left midway, went to college, did photography, kind of noodled around there a little bit. It took me a while to get that program. Then I did finish that program, then went back to university and did finally finish. But, by some measure, was that a failure? No. Did it actually matter in the grand scheme of things? Absolutely not. Did I have fun doing it? Absolutely.
I think that's what matters the most.
Do I regret going to raves at the beginning of that time in Montreal in the early 90s? Absolutely not. I made friendships that have lasted to this day, and it's a part of who I am. And would I've learned more as staying in university? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience. Yeah. And it's, I went back and got that degree. Did that degree help me get my job in games? No.
Yeah.
So in the end, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it really is Nothing Else Matters.
Maybe it is. Full circle. We gotta love a full circle.
Yeah, there you go.
Are you ready to take your knowledge of the gaming industry to the next level? Whether you're an aspiring game developer or a developer trying to level up your skills, Elevator has the perfect courses to help you stand out. Taught by professionals from top companies like Microsoft or Santa Monica Studios, Elevator offers exclusive offers and insights you won't find anywhere else. From games design to narrative development, these courses are designed for people who want to make a real impact in the world of gaming. Plus, all of the classes are live sessions, and you will build real-world projects and meet other community of like-minded learners. Head to elevator.com by using the link in the description of this episode to see how you can boost your game industry career. Don't play the game, learn to create it. Use a pixel at a time code for 200 quid off. Yes, that's right. Use the pixel at a time link for 200 quid out. Yes, you heard correctly. 200 quid out of the full price. So go to the description of this episode for more information. Thank you. So, okay, we talked about how to control some of the voices inside of our heads and the toolboxes and having some allies that we can use and we can draw from. So in terms of when we are developing a game or a major project and we are in one of those times where we don't know if we're going to be able to deliver a milestone, or that milestone has a huge impact on the project. And of course, like that comes with a
Yeah.
big amount of stress to the people involved in the team, especially to the management side. Do you have any tips for anyone listening to us to how to traverse through those difficult development times and how to
Yeah.
draw those allies from
Yeah.
the
I mean,
studio as well?
absolutely. And I think what it can help us do is to take on different perspectives. Because sometimes, too, when we're so close to a project, we can't see other people's perspectives and the people on our team, the leadership, maybe the creative director, you're the producer. So you have these conflicting priorities. And if we
Yeah.
can take on that other person's perspective, it can help us be much more compassionate and empathetic to what they're trying to do. And we then kind of removes our ego a little bit from those decisions, which is very helpful. And I think in those moments when you are coming up to trying to finish something and it's become quite stressful, the collaboration is what is most important. Is you don't want to be making those decisions by yourself or in a vacuum, and to have a conversation with key people and really hear everyone's perspectives, because someone is probably going to have a solution that all of you didn't think of. And so have a
100%.
conversation where you're really getting those thoughts out and no one is wrong. Like someone might say, let's cut the whole end of the game. And everyone's like, oh my God, that's insane. But it might be the best idea and you just haven't thought about it. And so if you can just have that conversation in a way that isn't contentious, so you need to have a great facilitator, which is often the producer. And producers need to have fantastic facilitation skills. And that is something I always push people to learn and read about and take courses in. But if you can really have that conversation, you're going to get through to the other side. Again, full circle, it does come back to prioritization, because if you are nearing the end of the project and things are getting very stressful and you can all see that maybe you're not going to get where you need to get to, there are things that probably need to go, as you need to be a great editor.
Yeah.
But that editing has to be done with a creative vision that's going to work. Otherwise, you'll end up cutting things that were essential to the success of that game, which is very difficult. And then the dealing with the stress, again, I would say, is having open and honest conversations with your coworkers and leadership teams, saying to tell them, hey, I'm really stressed right now. This is hard for me and I need your support. And that's hard to do, because then we worry that the people think we're weak. But I would say, I think that's showing the biggest strength of anyone if we can admit those things when things are difficult, and tapping into some of the courage inside us to say, hey, I'm struggling and this is hard for me. And when our teams see us admitting things like that, not to the point of creating instabilities, you have to be very careful, but even just if your team sees you saying those things, and they may also say to you, yeah, me too, I need help. And if you can get to that point of that type of psychological safety, that's when teams create amazing things. That's when teams make great
100%.
creative decisions. And it's hard to get to. But if you can establish that trust at the beginning, it helps a lot. You know, if you say, if I ask for help, you're going to help me, and that person says, yes, absolutely. You know, it's hard to create, but it is magical when you get there. Yeah.
100%. And sometimes we also see those shining moments where we also think, I'm struggling, I'm not seeing exactly where this goes. And from that sharing, as you said, someone else says, I'm also struggling, but I have this other skill set or this other strength, or maybe there's this other path. And you can create like open conversations and brainstorming that actually will guide you through it, right? And guiding with that kind of vulnerability, I think it's something we could all use a little bit more and not be so afraid of. Of course, sometimes we also need to be calm, because there's a lot of people that are not trained for that level of management too. And sometimes it can be a bit daunting.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. I mean, I sometimes make a joke with producers. I was like, we don't get to be dramatic. And our calmness and our ability to kind of see the big picture and to see things that are happening, and you know, see 2,000 miles down the railway track is a very important skill for producers. But it's a thing that can be learned. if people have a desire to learn it, but it is essential to that skill set for sure, being able to kind of see the bigger picture. But then that also feeds into the idea of having empowered teams that are involved in the decision making,
Yes.
and that it generally isn't the status quo in games and larger companies. We can sometimes have lots of pockets of teams, but really allowing teams to have a voice in the planning and to have a voice into what's possible and what's not, so that they are supporting each other and they are communicating that information rather than having deadlines and plans imposed upon them, is such an important aspect of production. And I think once producers realize that and leadership realizes that if you go directly to the people who are building the thing, they will often, have the answers that you're looking for. And so creating that connection and that structure that allows those people to have those conversations is essential in those times as well.
It's super key,
absolutely.
I think. But yeah. So, of course, previously you were working at Timber Games, but lately you also started your coaching journey, right? With Lumina Coachings, where you're helping other leaders and people in creative industries finding their fit and growing, which is amazing. So, what made you or motivated you to make the shift, and how is your experience in game development influencing your coaching approach right now?
That's a really good question. So I have always had a coaching aspect to my leadership. It's kind of where I naturally go because I'm a curious person. I read a lot of management, leadership, and organizational psychology, and it has been going that path for quite a long time. So I was already kind of in that space. And then I've had my own coach probably for about 14-ish years now, on and off. I've always had a coach. And I was very lucky when I was at the coalition that my manager, Christy Ray, actually got me a coach through work to help me kind of onto the next phase of my career. And I had taken a bit of a pause, and then having that put back in my life really solidified that, I love this. I love having a coach, and I love coaching people. And so I started coaching a few people here and there. I've always coached my direct reports. It's something I've done. And then the pandemic hit, and I found myself with extra time. And so, again, the coalition allowed me the flexibility to take a coaching course. And so I did that over a few weekends, over about a 6-month period. I had to take a teeny bit of time off work, but not too much. And so I finished that in early 2021. And that was with CTI, the Coaches Training Institute. And it's a style of coaching called coactive coaching. And when I discovered it, because I hadn't experienced it before, and I was like, oh, I love this. And so, and I met some people in that class that were just incredible humans that I've stayed in touch with. And I found my own coach through taking that course. She was one of my instructors. And that just really made me go, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. And so I had a bit of a plan. Again, this comes back to setting dates and requirements on ourselves that are, I'm going to say, fake. So I had this idea that at 55, I was going to semi-retire from games and do coaching and leadership training part-time. And then, I established Timber. I was very excited to start my own studio. I was the studio director. And after 2.5 years, I realized that I didn't have the same vision for the future as my co-founders, unfortunately. And so the future direction was like, I'm just not aligned with the future direction of what's happening here. And so it was like, well, why not do the coaching now? It's only 3 years off. But I've spent a lot of time really thinking about, like, why did I pick that date? And I still don't even know. Like, I don't know why that was the date. I don't know why I thought that. And so it just afforded me this sort of bit of mental space to take a bit of a break, which I really needed, and take some time off and go, well, what do I love doing? And what I love is helping people. And what I want to really do is I want our industry in video games to be more sustainable, to treat people better, be as human focused as possible, and be making profitable businesses that are sustainable and make fantastic gaming experiences for people. I know we can have all of it. We're not doing a very good job of it right now. So how do we fix those things? And I also have a huge love of working with emerging leaders So folks that are just starting to get into leadership and management because very little support exists for them. Most often as a lead,
Yeah.
you get told you've been promoted, you're a lead, and you get zero training of how to be a people manager,
Yeah.
of how to actually manage someone's career, how to coach people. And it kind of turns into a lot of advice giving and also
Yeah.
quite stressful for people. So yeah, so that's kind of the other aspect that
Yes.
I really love. And then I'm also doing some consulting, which has been great, just helping people with production processes and operational leadership stuff, which I like.
Oh,
But I
that's
love the
amazing. That's
flexibility.
something.
I don't work on Fridays. um, I just really enjoy it. I can go for a walk randomly in the sunshine when I want to. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
When you talk about like emerging leaders and people that got promoted
Yeah.
into a role and they still do not have like the support they need to fully shine in that role, what do you think it's happening there? Because sometimes it feels a little bit like there's this
Yeah.
huge gap, right? People just see the next role, the
Yes.
next stage, but there's a huge gap in knowledge, either if you're starting your own business or if you just got promoted and you're a line manager or you got promoted to a management career, like, you finally added
Yeah.
that lead to your title, but you find yourself
Yes.
not doing the work you
Yes.
enjoy so much anymore. Sometimes you might be questioning it a bit. So, what do you think is going into that, and how can we improve that as an
Yeah.
industry, really? Because, of course, that's something you're doing, but
Yeah.
can you explore a bit more of that? Because I think it might be
Absolutely.
helpful for someone
I
out
think
there.
the problem is video games is still pretty young as an industry. And
Yeah.
I'm going to guess a little bit where it comes from because I haven't done any research in this area or anything, but is that most of the managers
Yeah.
that exist now that are my age weren't giving any management training either. And so they learned it on the fly
Yeah.
and stuff kind of got developed and created. And courses would be brought in every once in a while at larger companies, like, here's a leadership training course. But I will say never in my career, when I got promoted and got my first direct reports, did someone say, oh, now you have to go through this training program and it's going to teach you how to be a better people manager. It usually happened after the fact and was a part of like a bigger cohort training thing because that company decided they needed to leadership training. I did have some excellent leadership training at Electronic Arts. It was incredibly good. And it completely transformed me as a leader, made me very much better at what
That's
I
so
do.
good.
But for me, I was just a naturally curious person on leadership and management and people management, and I love it. So I did it myself and then went out and sought out all this information and books. And I mean, I consume more podcasts than is humanly possible, I think. But yeah, so
Same.
but for, that amazing environment artist that wants to progress their career and maybe wants to be an art director because they love art and are amazing at directing art, does not mean they're going to be a great people manager. And so we have to stop promoting the person that is the best at their craft and then making them a people manager. So we need to have different paths for people, which companies are starting to do, or they're starting to take the principal path and make that the non-people manager path, and then have the lead path be the people manager path. But then who's kind of directing the creative is still fuzzy, or in engineering, who's kind of leading the technical is still a bit fuzzy. And so some companies have chosen to completely separate the roles. I don't know if I think that's amazing. It can raise your costs a lot, so you have to be extremely careful with that. But I think really the first step is, as managers that are promoting people, have the hard conversation with the person, observe their people management skills. And if they're not great at it, and if they hate going to meetings, do not promote them into a management position that is managing people and going to meetings, because they will just hate their life and they will not be happy. So I think that's the first step, is really changing how we promote people and what our evaluation structure is. And then helping people realize that promoting to quote unquote management isn't the only progression. So we have to give people different paths to progression, so they feel like they're growing and progressing. And then the other aspect is, no matter how big you are and you are putting people in brand new people management positions, don't assume that you have the capacity to teach it to them, because you don't. After doing this as long as I have, And I have made this mistake so many times. You do not have the time and you need
Mm-hmm.
outside help. So whether you're in a large
Yes.
company and you can tap into your learning and development team to bring in some training for you, or you bring in an outside consultant, someone like me, there's so many of us in this industry, to do some coaching
Mm-hmm.
and to do some training, put people together in a cohort too, because then they learn from each other and it's fantastic. But you've got
Yeah.
to spend time and money on that. And you can't just
Yeah.
assume that people know how to do it, because they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Like it's the same, like, just to make a silly comparison here, it's the same as assuming a baby is born and they will
Yeah.
be walking the next day. Like,
No.
that doesn't sound right. That
Yeah.
doesn't sound right at all. And just because we're talking with each other every day, it doesn't mean we all have that
No.
management skill or that people skill. Like, the people skill might be some more natural to some
Yeah.
people depending on their personalities or their, relation
Yeah.
relationability.
No.
No, that's not a word in English.
Relatability. Relatability. Yeah. There you go.
Relatability. There we go. It might be easier, income easier for some people, but that doesn't mean they have that extra mile of like knowledge on how to guide this, or like how to put someone
Yeah.
forward for something
Absolutely.
else, or how to, put yourself
Yeah.
with the team, right?
Absolutely.
And with the team and making sure you're guiding from a place of kindness, but also with the
Yeah.
assertivity that it's
And too
necessary
many
to move
managers
things
fall
forward,
into the
right?
trap of, my job is to tell everyone what to do. And I don't mean an aggressive, like, dictator
Yes.
way, but they think their job is to solve everyone's problems. Well, when you do that as a manager,
Mm-hmm.
all that happens is everyone comes to you with more problems, and they never learn how to solve those
Yes.
problems themselves. And so that's doing a little bit more coaching. Now, coaching has also been
Mm-hmm.
warped in management, unfortunately, where it's been wielded as the manager doesn't do anything at all. And every time the employee comes to them and says, help me,
Yeah.
I call it the boomerang effect, which is terrible, which is, the
Yeah.
employee kind of sends out the boomerang of like, I need help. And the manager just sends it right back to them. That's not what we're talking about
Yeah.
here, but it is drawing
Yeah.
out of that person what the actual problem is, really understanding it, and then asking a lot of questions of that person so they come to a solution themselves. And then they get more
Yeah.
confidence that the next time they encounter a problem like that, they actually might be able to solve it themselves instead of coming to you every time. And if you can empower people
Mm-hmm.
with that knowledge and understanding, it's magical. It works really, really well. But you have to be very careful that you aren't just
Yeah.
saying to the person, well, how do you want to solve it? That's not coaching. That's just
Yeah.
boomerang management, which is not healthy. Yeah. And then you also don't want to be the other side of that, which is every time a direct report comes to you with a problem, you immediately tell them how to solve the problem. Number one, you're probably solving the wrong
Yeah.
problem because you haven't asked enough questions. And number two, that person
Mm-hmm.
actually ends up, even though they're very thankful and like, wow, that's so great, that's awesome, they actually walk away a little bit disempowered because they now are like, well, I
Yeah.
have to go get help with everything. And so you've got to, there's some nuance there, but if we stay curious and we ask the right questions,
Mm-hmm.
we can grow people and grow their knowledge and grow their confidence. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I'm a really fan of is to, again, do buddy systems with people when they feel like they
Yeah.
don't know enough about an area of work they're doing, or if they don't know enough about like a new thing and they want to learn, like pairing people up
Yeah.
with people that have more experience on that area can quite often be a nice trade, because people
Yeah.
end up like balancing each other off, and you end up like learning a little bit more about that and building that confidence yourself, because you're working with
Absolutely.
someone that knows it, but not as a producer. When I was working as a producer and I did this, I always made sure the task was specific to the
Yeah.
person that wanted to learn and not to the
Right.
person that
Yeah.
already knew, because that
Yeah.
way you can balance off and like make people try to learn and talk to each other and still embrace that community aspect of being
Yeah.
in a games development
Absolutely.
studio, which should also be
Yes.
fun,
Every day.
right?
All the
Sometimes.
time.
And it's, yeah. And I think it would be nice. Like, I don't know, but sometimes it doesn't feel that way. So I just want to leave
Yeah.
a word out there that like, yeah, we all need that reminder that these can be fun and we all came to this industry because
Yeah.
of something, or because we thought like games were amazing at a certain point,
Absolutely.
right? So I think it's important
Yeah.
for us not to forget about that. So what is your favorite game right now, or anything that still inspires you to this
Yeah.
day to also continue focusing
Well,
in
I
games? Do you
play
have any?
games a lot still. I'm a huge fan of Bethesda games like Fallout, and so I grabbed Starfield last year and played
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And then I made a mistake in the game and I stopped playing it because I was like, "Oh no." And then recently picked it up again because I realized I could fix the thing I had done. So I'm almost
Mm-hmm.
finished it now. I'm a little bit sad because I don't want it to be done. So I'm about to finish the
Oh
main
no.
campaign and I'm holding off. I'm holding off. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to pick up
Mm-hmm.
next. We'll see. We'll see what I grab. But I don't finish a lot of games anymore because they're so long. So I'm quite proud of myself that I'm going to finish Starfield.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think just bringing that into like the having fun at work, I think we forget to
Mm-hmm.
play. And
Yeah.
playing at work when you're making games is so important. It builds your team, it builds camaraderie, it builds collaboration, it helps people get to know each other. And I don't just mean playing the game
Mm-hmm.
you're making, because and you have to, absolutely. But sometimes you can, you've been looking at it every day. Maybe you don't want to play that game that day. Is play a different game, and to set
Yeah.
that up for the team, make it easy. Everyone jumps on. You'll be laughing. It's a little bit competitive. You'll just have such a great time. And I think, we forget to set aside time to do those things. And then sometimes we also get so focused on deadlines that we're like, well, we can't take an hour out to play a game, but you can. And it should be a part
Yeah.
of your plan, which is literally like have fun. And so for every Friday
Yeah.
at this time, we're going to play a game together. And I think we forget that collective play and those collective experiences are actually an incredibly important part of just the human experience. And you can also do that without
Mm-hmm.
alcohol. And it's very inclusive because you can pick a
Yes.
game that everybody can play. And so you don't always have to be in a structured social space to connect with each other, but you can also do it through play. Yeah, I think it's really important to do that.
That's amazing to hear, and I think that's
Yeah.
great advice. So yeah, it's very important. Okay, so before we do leave, do you have any statements, any final messages you would like to leave regarding like imposter syndrome with some of the people you have been coaching, or do you want to leave a final message to
You know
anyone
what
out
I
there
would just say
regarding
is
that?
that we are all complicated, messy human beings, and that's normal, and that's a part
Mm-hmm.
of life. And that path that you
Yeah.
always envisioned for your life is going to take turns and dips and valleys and mountaintops and moments of great joy and great sadness. But that is what life is made up of. And it's
Yeah.
important to feel all of those things and all those ranges of emotions. And that there is an incredible network
Mm-hmm.
out there that wants to help and wants to support. And so find a Discord community that, is amazing. Find a LinkedIn group of folks that you want to talk to, connect with people and make
Mm-hmm.
those connections and experiences. Try to go to conferences that are in your city if you can, because people want to help and they want to help you. And you don't have to go through those struggles alone. And for folks that are working and are looking at the next step of their career, honestly, get a coach. And that's not a plug for me. That is a plug for all of the incredible coaches out there that are working. For me personally, it was been completely transformative to have a coach with me in my life and to have someone I can
Mm-hmm.
talk to and to realize that I do have the strength and power inside myself to transform and change and get through things. It's magical. Yeah.
Thank you, Zoe. That's amazing. So beautifully put. Okay, so where can people find more about you and
Yeah.
Lumina Coaching and follow your journey?
LinkedIn is where I'm most active. I left Twitter when it was purchased by a certain person, so I still have an account, but
Yeah.
I don't post on there anymore. So
Yeah.
LinkedIn's the best place to find me. Request a connection, I'll accept it. And then my website is under construction, but it does exist. It is
Mhm.
lumina-leadership.com. And that is the name of it. But you can also access it from my LinkedIn. So really, just find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Zoe Curnoe out there. So if you Google me, that's who you're going to find.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, Zoe. I think this was extremely different format from the one we usually do. But I think I had a lot of fun on my side. I think it was a good conversation to have, and I'm sure there's people out there that will benefit from this advice, and maybe not be so harsh on themselves moving forward with their careers in with whatever moment they're having. And don't forget, folks, do get a coach.
Get advice.
Get advice. It is important, and it really does change your perspective and the way you look at things. I'm speaking for myself, honestly, because it really, really helps.
I'm so glad.
So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for this.
Thank you so much, Zoe. I had fun too. Thank you so much.
Bye.
And I'll see you soon. Goodbye. Hey y'all, it's me again. So thank you so much for staying till the end of this episode, and don't forget to follow us for more. Please do share with your friends, with your coworkers, or anyone that you feel like was in need of listening to this episode. Please also don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us on both LinkedIn and Instagram for now. And do tell us what you thought of this episode, and let's keep the communication flowing, folks. For extra content, of course, don't forget to check out our Patreon and visit our store for the goodies. So if you have a burning question or you'd like to suggest a discussion topic, don't forget to send us your questions and audios to apixelatatime.podcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for staying on that side, supporting this podcast, and listening to today's episode. Don't forget to take it a pixel at a time. Goodbye. This episode was hosted by Inês Lagarde, with special guest Zoe Curnoe. Produced by Inês Lagarde and José Machado. Audio design by José Machado. For more information, check our show notes.